this one. Is this working? Wonderful. We have a good evening. Lovely. What a brilliant and engaged audience you are. It's not like you're doing me a favour though. Because when I talk to people, I really like to get some feedback and people really engaged. So I want a little bit of a practice. Yeah, so could you do me a favour? And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like you to reply. The answer is yes, I'll tell you now. I'd like you to reply by raising your hand and shouting yes as loudly as you can. Really make this up for echo, okay? Are you ready? The question's coming. Are you looking forward to my talk? Yes! Amazing, thank you so much. So I do quite a lot of confidence talks, and usually the veterans of, let's be honest, British men, it's sort of in the data space. They tend to be very quiet, and I use this trick at the start of my talk and explain it to you. I know from data and evidence that one of the best ways to get someone to do you a favour is by giving you a compliment. And what's really interesting about it, it works brilliantly if the compliments sincerely like the person who's giving you compliments. In this case, you really are an engaged audience and absolutely delightful. That may not be true in all cases. And what's really interesting about the evidence around this is that when you give somebody a compliment, it also works if they don't like you, they don't think you're sincere. We've all sat at our desk at some point and someone's come up and gone, oh my God, I love your shoes. Could you just file this report for me? And then you're sat there thinking, why did I agree to them? I hate that guy. So it's phenomenally useful. The other thing that we know from data evidence is that when you commit to something, so rather than passively listening to my talk, you engage and say you're looking forward to it, you will think my talk is better than it actually is. It's genius, isn't it? So my job is in data evidence, and I do an awful lot of AI, and I'm not really talking about that today. I talk about AI a lot, but I thought today I'd talk a bit more about kind of how we make decisions, and how we talk to people really, and how we can make better decisions ourselves, albeit very briefly, because it's just 10 minutes. And the other thing I'm interested is, when we get down here, because I'm a wanderer, and I quite recently fell down a hole in the stage, so I thought I'd go for a little bit more of a safe landing here. So I've been down this street since September 2020, sort of 6 months after the pandemic, back when Dominic Cummings thought it'd be a good idea to get some more data, and it got a point. It was evidently quite difficult kicking off work around the pandemic when we didn't know how vaccines were being rolled out, how many people were sick, what was going on in the hospitals, and long work and very quickly to fix that. And he sort of suggested that what if we had data about everything? And so the idea was to create a data science team. And we're not political, we weren't appointed by the politicians who went through civil service recruitment, but the capability is sort of there. And more recently, we built this big AI team. It's super exciting, ai.gov.uk, go and have a look. We talk about that a lot. I'm going to talk more about the data here. My background has not led me here. My career has been a series of accidents. I sort of started off as a particle physicist, wandered into finance after 6 or 7 years, didn't like it terribly, joined a medical technology startup where I kind of learned to code properly for the first time. Spent 10 years sort of building that up until we sold it, then ended up in Downing Street. And I walked in on the first day and I sat down with the principal private secretary, otherwise known as Party Marty, most fun you can have on a Thursday, and his welcome. And I said, thank you very much. And he said, I've got one piece of advice to you. And I said, you're great, what's that? And he said, you have 6 months to have an impact. So I said, gosh, okay, well, what would you like me to do? And he said, oh, I don't know. And that was sort of where we started. The civil service was not really ready. They had no idea what to do with data. So I thought, well, this is great. I know what to do. This is my job. We're going to get data. We're going to build APIs. We're going to do dashboards and charts and stuff, and everyone will bloody love it. Reader, they did not. Didn't go terribly well. When we first brought in, it was harder than I thought. So the point of all of this, we're looking to get people to make better decisions. And the area that we particularly want to make better decisions is policy making. We want evidence-based policy where we've got some good information that this policy is going to work, it's going to deliver better outcomes, it's going to solve what the problem is. And that's harder than it sounds. So what you have across the board, and this is probably all this, it's certainly me, is you have a bunch of people who consider themselves experts. And there's this super fascinating study I refer to a lot, it's the Tetlock study. And back in the 80s, Philip Tetlock got 284 experts, policy experts, people that really understood and worked in policy. And you don't need to write, I can email the slides later if you want this, no, it's good back, it's going to be helpful. What he did was he gave 100 questions, and they were fairly simple, and they were around the lines of sort of this thing that's happening in the world right now. In 20 years, will it be more of that, less of that, or like roughly the same? And the policy experts predicted the future, so they went, 20 years things will be like this. And 20 years later, he came back and he assessed all of their answers. And he wrote a paper on it, and Daniel Kahneman from Thinking Fast and Slow famously said the results were basically, they did about as well as monkeys throwing darts at a dartboard. So really not well at all. You could do much better just with choosing some averages, on a very, very basic algorithm. There's a few things that were quite interesting about it. So people did better in teams. You talked about the diversity earlier. When you put people together to make decisions, they do a better job. And actually, studies show that a more diverse team compared to a less diverse team will make better decisions 87% of the time. And useful when you're hiring, you don't just hire the individually best person, you hire the person that has diversity for a more successful team. So when they build teams, the teams are better than individuals. People did slightly better when they predicted the future outside their area of expertise than in it. So if you're an educational expert, you did worse at predicting the future of education than you did the future of defence, for example. But also people were incredibly confident they were going to be right. Really confident. And this is what we find across the board. Technologists in studies on average are about 20% right about the future of technology. So people come up to me now and go, what's next in AI? And I go, I have no idea, there's no point asking me. I will be guessing, I know from statistics, I'm 80% likely to be wrong. Even when you go to sort of fund managers, 74% say they're performing better than average and the rest are all performing average. And as an expert, that's not how averages work. So we're walking into a world where I should have predicted was going to be quite difficult because of course it's full of experts. And when you go in and you say to people, I've got some lovely data about education, which you're the expert in. They say, no, I already know everything about it. We're fine. Go away. So how do you get around that? And so I started realising that actually, it's not easy to hire a really expert data team who are amazing, but the hard thing was actually integrating with the system. And the whole point of getting evidence and data, when you really think about it, it's not for the purpose of information. It's for the purpose of driving better decisions. And decisions are driven by guesses about the future. We want education to go like this, and we think this is the way to do it, for example. So what we needed to do was try and teach people how to make better decisions, and so that they can be receptive to our data. And in fact, studies show, or suggest, I think there's a lot of variation across people, but on average, 35,000 decisions a day is the number we make, which I think explains why I'm so tired. But also, when I really think about that, I think, well, actually, we're trying to teach other people to make good decisions about important work stuff, but learning ourselves how to make better decisions can improve every aspect of your life. How you spend quality time with your children, how you make decisions about what next career step to take. If we get better at decisions ourselves, we can improve an awful lot of our lives and the people around us. So, this is an area of huge interest to me, and with 10 minutes I can't tell you much about it, but I can recommend that you go and do a load of reading, this is super fascinating. When I'm talking to somebody about data, I can mislead them. I can trick an audience into thinking my talk's better than it is. That's kind of morally neutral, I think, because I might have a better time talking to people that like me, and you have a better time because you think you've got a better deal than you really have. But also we can do it really, really badly, right? So I've got this thing which I'm tempted to grammar correct, I don't know quite what's happening there, but there you go. So this is really obvious, you can tell the problem immediately. Fewer than 5% of ducks can tell automation. You will immediately have spotted that it's clearly probably about 0% of ducks. As far as we know how to define world domination, if ducks maybe have their own model, maybe they're doing fine, I don't know, but let's assume that the real number is 0%. Having said 5%, we're suggesting to people there's a number that's a little bit less than 5, maybe 4%, and that's really misleading. It's clearly a joke and it's fine. except sometimes it's not a joke. So this is a real political information piece that went out in America, and it relates the number of abortions, which is, as you can see from the chart, rising, with the number of cancer screenings, which is going down. And technically the numbers are right. This scale on the x-axis is fine. The cancer is going down by about 1 million, and the abortion is going up by sort of the order of 40,000. The way it's presented, of course, it looks like they're correlated. There's some kind of relationship between the two. And when you chart it properly, it's a little more like that. And you can see there isn't really a relationship at all. So we can take data, kind of accurate data, and make people think things that aren't true. And we have to be very careful, particularly working sort of in the political space, to make sure that we're not being wildly misleading to people. We are giving them a chance to make a fair, reasoned decision. And in fact, we also know that telling people numbers at all is incredibly dangerous. You walk into a shop, you see a beautiful jacket, it's reduced from £400 to £200, you go, hooray! I've got no evidence at all that it was ever worth £400. I've got no evidence it's worth £200. But the fact I've seen those two numbers next to each other tricks my brain into thinking I'm getting a bargain. And we can do that when we tell people about our data evidence as well. We have to be quite careful not to do it. I'll give you a horrific example of that shortly. So this is called the framing effect. The way you frame data can cause people to make a different decision. People make inconsistent decisions with the same information depending on how you tell it to them. And that's happening to you every time you walk past advertising, for example. We have to get quite wise to this. Everybody in this room, if you're not a vegetarian, if you are, apologies, would go for the beef on the left, 80% lean. You can probably spot rationally 20% fat is the same thing. You definitely won't buy that. The framing is really, really leading. And some of this has to do with human credulity. Humans are very credulous. We believe what we're told by other humans. And that's legitimately a survival technique. You know, if you were back in the days of the cavemen and somebody comes running in and they go, oh my God, quick, everyone run, there's a fleet of sailors tigers coming this way, and look hungry. The guy that goes, I think I'll just go and attack, gets eaten. And I think that's how evolution works, right? So we believe things. It's a good example of a heuristic, it's a shortcut. Believe what other people tell you, make decisions faster. And we will believe things that have been disproven over and over again, in fact. And we'll be talking to people who believe things that have been disproven, but they'll still believe it. And there's a biological mechanism for that. And I've given this a bit of thought over the years. Quite a long time ago, let's say 20 odd years, I was having dinner with a friend, and my friend said, did you know, just read this amazing statistic, did you know that Labradors are responsible for most of the dog attacks in the UK? No. Are they? And I thought to myself, my aunt's just been attacked by Labradors, so it could be. Okay. Are we saying that Labradors are just really vicious, but no one's talking about it? And they went, no, it's not that, is it? It will be because there's more Labradors. So just like, you know, of all the Labradors, it's really a popular dog. So I said to my friend, is it just because there's more Labradors? He said, you know, I don't know. And I thought, I must look it up. And then, you know, I had dinner with other friends at some point, and they mentioned a dog attack, and I said, did you know Labradors? And eventually I got round to looking it up, and I got the answer, which is absolute rubbish, it's not true at all. But it was an interesting fact, interesting enough to shock me. It was believable my aunt had been attacked by a Labrador, and I knew nothing about dog attacks. So it laid down a memory in my brain, the first memory pathway in my brain to do with dog attacks. And now whenever anyone says dog attack, or I read it, my brain goes, Labradors! And then I go, no, that's not true. And every time that happens, it reinforces that memory pathway, which means that next time somebody says dog attacks, my brain goes, Labradors, even more loudly, and so now yours, you're welcome. But it's an amazing reminder to me of how fallible my brain is in terms of understanding, decoding information, and using it to make decisions. I might just walk a little bit further away from a Labrador as a result of that. So we anchor to the first believable information we get about something, and that can be used to manipulate us, and when we're talking to other people, it can be used to mislead them. And there's some very interesting research about them. What we do in number 10 is we build lots of dashboards, lots and lots of dashboards, and they will tell the Prime Minister information, everything we know about this policy area. We do a lot of modelling. If you do these policy things together, how will they add up? Will they relieve the pressure on the prison systems? What are your options for making sure there's more prison spaces? What are your options for improving educational outcomes? If we want to go to net zero, what things do we need to do and will we get there? So we model it and we show it to them on the dashboard. And there's something interesting about that as well. So, if I'm going to make a decision, I can do that in a number of ways. If I go and get a lovely relaxing aromatherapy massage and someone talks to me about homeopathy, I will be in an intuitive thinking space, which is lovely and relaxing. And then I go and make an investment, I'm going to buy a house, and look at it, it's gorgeous. Ooh, it's a thatched roof, lovely, it's a travel investment, it costs like £50,000 every 10 years to replace them. Roses above the door, you're not going to get crammed through that. This is a bad idea, right? But isn't it beautiful? Now, if I go off and look at some data, this is XKCD Comics, it's the contents of his inbox. Don't worry about it too much. If I go and look at some data, it puts me in an analytical thinking space, which means that when I go and make my investment decision, definitely miss the slide there, I might go for something that's more in line with my objectives, something that isn't going to require a lot of upkeep. I can definitely get the pram in there, I can probably resell it at some point. The fact of looking at data information at all actually aids people to make more rational decisions. You can do it yourself. If you're going to decide you're going to spend money, you want to do it well, you don't want to be misled by the lovely climbing roses, go and get a copy of the Financial Times, have a quick look, and then make your decision. Because if you're looking at any data or information at all, you will make a better job of making that decision than if you go to quality massage. It's sad, but it's true. So when we actually go and present data to the Prime Minister, the act of presenting data at all will put him in a more analytical thinking space. He's more likely to make a easy decision by doing this. I find this absolutely fascinating. But we do have to be very, very careful. And we saw this with the jacket example. We anchor to numbers as humans. When you hear a number, you adjust to it. Here's an example. There was a really horrible study where they got judges, on average 10 years of trial experience, and they were judging cases where the average sentence was roughly 2 years, quite, small sentences. And the journalist would go up to them at the start and go, do you think you're going to be in 3 years? Does 3 years sound good? And when that happened, the judges gave the person they were sentencing on average 8 months longer in jail than if no one had said anything. The act of somebody going on and saying the words 3 years gets people in prison for longer than if you didn't. And conversely, if you said 1 year, it would be inclined to go down. Now, this is great when you're negotiating the next job. Go big. Adjust their thinking upwards. Go first and go big. But when we're actually trying to get people to make good decisions, or when people are manipulating us with advertising, this can be really, really harmful. So, I have many examples of the ways that your brain can mess with sort of data information. This is short talk. So I just want you to, I suppose I want to give a flavour of the kind of things that we think about that are not coding and charts and dashboards and sort of AI solutions, are actually the way that we interact with the world, because I find it fascinating. So when we're trying to make decisions, using evidence, not about just the decision about itself, but the way humans make decisions, and using evidence about the way that we communicate and the way that we can do that well and fairly to get people to make the best decisions that are reasonable to them, or we can do that badly and unfairly and mislead them, starts becoming incredibly important. So here we go. When I'm communicating with data, this is a passion of mine, and this is communicating with other people, but also when you're making your own decisions. Got a little checklist I'm recommending to you. What do I know, and can I find out? What don't you know? Always make sure you know what you don't know before you make a decision, because it could have a really big bearing. Things you can't find out, you're uncertain of. What biases might you be operating under? We all operate under thousands of biases at all times. But when you've come in, you're a policymaker, maybe you've been in opposition for 14 years, and you've formed a really strong view on something, you haven't really checked if there's an evidence base. Go and check that before you make your decisions. When you're talking to your audiences, they'll have preferences. They tell you one thing they want, you don't want to feel stupid. Go into a room and tell somebody something as though they're an idiot, they'll never listen to you. What does your audience want to hear? What kind of communication styles do they want? How can you bring them on a journey with data and evidence? How can you set up your decisions for success? find out what they are, find out what they're interested in, find out what they think in advance, and make sure that you've got the evidence that back up a sort of reasons and conclusions. So the way that you present your information is incredibly important. And it's just a topic that I think is very useful, and I think that when we're working in these kind of fields of work, we often focus quite heavily on the facts, the coding, the product, the data, the information, and we don't always think about how it lands with people and how we get the human interaction in our work. And there you go. There's a few thoughts. If you're interested, you can go off and have a quick Google. There's a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini that's fascinating on this subject. And otherwise, I just wanted to say, this has been an absolute delight. It's been incredibly inspiring to see people coming up. Also, genuinely a really engaged and happy group of people. I can feel the pride, and it makes me proud to be around you. So, very many congratulations. Congratulations to the organisers who've done an incredible job. Thank you so much for your work.